Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have unboxing of the VIVO V40 Lite. Let's get started. Some time ago, I gave you the unboxing of the VIVO V40 Lite, which comes with collaboration with Zeiss. In this case, it does not include that collaboration, but it is still part of this family, so let's see what it can come to offer us. Beforehand, we already know that it does have support for networks due to the name, but let's take it out of the box. But first, I will tell you about its price, which in Mexico at its launch is 9,499 pesos. On the screen you see the reference price in dollars, but remember that the prices here are not the same as there. Generally in Mexico prices are much higher, especially if you have a close collaboration with Telcel, as is the case with this manufacturer. So, let's take it out of the box to get to know it. We directly find the device with a sticker, where some of its main features like the Light Now for portrait, its RAM memory, its night camera, and its battery stand out. We'll talk more about all of this in a moment, but for now it strikes me that they promise that the battery will have 4 years of durability, possibly in terms of the wear and tear it might get. So that's a positive thing, but I'll tell you more about that in a moment. And as you realize, we already have the device here in our hands. The back cover design is extremely nice. It's possibly one of its strongest points. Almost always VIVO devices usually have this kind of nice and pretty designs. I don't know if through the camera it is so easily seen, but it includes like brush strokes that give it a very nice touch depending on the angle at which it receives the light. I think that with this camera setting you can appreciate a little better this texture that I'm telling you, which is a texture simply to the eye, because to the touch it's completely smooth. So let's turn it on while we see what else is here in the box. And as you can see, the first thing we come across is the case, which is completely transparent, completely flexible. So it's time for you to tell me how you would use this device, with a case or without a case. I think that with the case on, it retains part of the essence of the design, but it is true that it generates a little more ugly and unpleasant reflections. Let's say it loses this satin design that we originally found. So I would use it without case. Let's see what else comes here in the box, because we will find papers of a lifetime, simple documentation, and finally the charger and charging cable. As you can see, it comes with USB-A on this side. Obviously on the other side it will come with USB-C, and it comes with a considerably large thickness because it needs to support all this current. We're looking at a remarkably high charging power. 44 watts to be exact, which is not bad at all. Especially considering that it's a charger that can still be carried comfortably, unlike much heavier chargers. So, let's put it over here again and focus on the cell phone so I can tell you about the rest of its features. I already have this device set up, and as I anticipated, it comes with a very close partnership with Telcel here in Mexico. Therefore, we will find this horrible widget that supposedly shows the time and weather, but in a terrible way. Another terrible Telcel news widget, Claro Drive, Claro Video, Claro Pay, Claro Shop, Claro Lo Que Quieras, and many others. Fortunately, each of them, for the most part, you can get to uninstall or remove if you want, so that's the least of it. Fortunately, the Telcel backgrounds now come without this colored strip at the top. I think they finally improved that aspect, but we're not here to talk about Telcel, we're here to talk about this device. This is the Dream White Color Edition, but there is also another one in mahogany black. It comes with a thickness of 7.65 millimeters and weighs 179 grams. Like many VIVO devices, it gives a lot of priority to design, so it is very slim, very comfortable really to use. It arrives with a 6.78-inch screen on its diagonal Full HD Plus resolution with 120 Hz in its refresh rate and a peak local maximum brightness of 1300 nits. Clearly that is an AMOLED display, and overall I think it comes to deliver. It's not an ultra spectacular screen, but I think it's fine. Where it does disappoint many in the sound, because it only has mono sound, that is, it only has one speaker. We will not find speaker on the other side, so there is no immersive sound experience, although it does have a very loud sound, but definitely that at this price it disappoints that we do not find stereo sound. The front camera is 32 megapixels with f-aperture 2.0 fixed focus, And here's a screenshot before I took the picture, so you can see it was a pretty tricky backlit environment. After taking the picture, it does a good job in balancing highlights and shadows, although it doesn't seem to be a spectacular camera for selfies and even having 50 megapixels. But this is a first impression. Later I will give you in the review more detailed information on how this camera performs. For the back, we find the main camera of 50 megapixels with a Sony sensor, autofocus aperture f1.9, but apparently no optical stabilization. Then there will be the 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera with f2.2 aperture and fixed focus, and finally a 2 megapixel macro camera with f aperture 2.4. I think this one was completely unnecessary. They could have perfectly placed autofocus on the ultra-wide camera and the result would have been much better. And by the way, I remind you that this device incorporates this feature called Aura Light, which will allow us to have a slightly more uniform light fill unlike traditional flash. You can perfectly turn it on or off from portrait mode. And something I like is that it's able to change the color temperature, so if you're in a warm light environment, you can also give it a warm illumination, unlike other devices that just have a flash that's usually very cool. So, for light-assisted photography, it definitely does come into its own. Here we are looking at some test photographs just with 16mm, that is with the ultra-wide camera. The result is positive. We are in an environment that is not very complicated. Subsequently, with the main camera, we continue to appreciate a good performance in photography. Now note that applying 2x zoom, still photography retains optical quality. This is thanks to the Sony sensor it incorporates, which is well optimized. So, despite the fact that it does not have a telephoto camera, at least the photographs with 52mm still come out as if it were optical quality. Subsequently, you are looking at the photograph at 5x zoom, that is 130 millimeters, and the result honestly looks good. It does look like digital zoom, but it still looks good quality, and the maximum zoom this device achieves is 10x. Other manufacturers might promise you 20x, but with worsening quality. Here I think it goes up to 10x, honest. Observe now the result that the macro camera gives us. It is a result that is not bad, but now look at the result that gives us the main camera applying a little digital zoom. And from my point of view, it captures a much more accurate color, although the level of detail looks very similar. Now we are looking at a portrait photograph with the main camera, and again the result is positive, especially because it does manage to detect depth. It does keep the subject in focus, although not all the gaps as accurately. But the good thing is that it also gives us the possibility to take portraits with telephoto perspective with 52mm, so the pictures can also look more professional in this aspect. As for video recording with the main camera, yes, it can record in 4K at 30 frames per second, although the ultra-wide camera requires you to lower the resolution to full HD, but fortunately the front camera also supports recording in 4K. The battery is 5500 mAh. We saw a moment ago that the manufacturer promises a durability of 4 years or so before it degrades to 80%, although the only way to check that is to have this device for 4 years. And it supports 44-watt charging as well. It obviously does not have wireless charging or reversible wireless charging. In this case, we will also find in-display fingerprint reader and facial recognition, but only in 2 dimensions. This device comes with Android 14 and FunTouch OS 14, so it does come updated from the factory. To wrap things up, it also has 8 GB of RAM with another 8 virtual, although I don't like virtual RAM and in this case you can't turn it off. It also has 256 GB of storage and its processor is the Snapdragon 6 Gen 1, a processor that honestly for this price is very weak, although for the vast majority of users will be a sufficiently high power. It is a processor that, as I say, although it is very short compared to its price, if you are not going to be playing, you will notice that it is a sufficiently fluid processor. In fact, possibly it helps to have a better power consumption, the fact of having a simple processor. But if you are a user who requires a lot of power for the type of applications or games you run, it definitely falls short. Here I have the result. For example, in Geekbench, in single core it reached 939 points and in multi-core it reached 2344. In fact, in this case seems to be well optimized processor and gave us a higher score than what we would find in the Snapdragon 695. So I repeat, it is a considerably good processor, but if your top priority is the processor, if you are going to find other proposals with a much more powerful processor. In Antutu notes that reached 516,686 points, and I repeat, it is a device that I would consider good for the vast majority of users in terms of power, but there are definitely other details such as mono sound that if I get to bother me a lot. For now, this has been a first look at the VIVO V40 Lite. I hope you have enjoyed this content. We will have the video review available soon, so I hope you like this one and we'll see you next time.